I'd like to call the December 14th, 2023 Public Works Board to order. Roll call, please.
Mr. Picard,
Here.
Mr. White,
Here.
Mr. Waters,
Here.
Mr. Polachek, Mr. Beagle,
I think
Here.
he's muted.
Ms. Schmager.
Here.
Here.
Thank you.
So Madison, Polachek, and Beagle are both here, just so you know.
Thank you.
Everybody is here.
Yep, indeed.
Okay, next on the agenda is correction and/or approval of the minutes from our last meeting, November 9th. Anybody wish to make any changes or recommendation or motion to approve?
I move to approve the meeting minutes of November 9th, 2023.
Second.
Motion and second to approve the minutes. All those in favor, please say aye.
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 Opposed? Motion passes. Next is item 4, questions and public comment. Please limit your time to 3 minutes. State your name and address when starting your comments, and fill out the sign-in sheet if you haven't already.
Emergency number.
I guess that's me. Hello, my name is Susan Trier, and I live at N6404 Cedar Lane in the town of Lake Mills. In your conversations tonight on moving forward with a new yard waste facility, I urge you to design that facility to accommodate town residents as well. Letting town residents buy a pass will help offset the cost of the facility and also help town residents who struggle with their own yard waste issues. During a Public Works Board meeting back in January, there was a discussion that town residents weren't interested in the service and that the town residents along Shorewood Hills Road already receive some services from John's. Please note, these services are not available to all town residents. And honestly, they're not as convenient as having a municipal facility available whenever the resident wants to. I know that town residents would participate if given a chance. Back at the town's annual meeting in April, a number of residents asked for such a facility. And again, during the town's comprehensive plan resident input session in early December, many residents asked for a composting yard waste facility. Given the size of our communities, a shared facility simply makes sense. So thank you for the opportunity to speak, and I look forward to purchasing a pass for the new facility. Thank you.
Thank you, Suzanne. Anybody else wish to speak? Seeing no one, we'll move on to item 5, Director's Report.
Thank you. Dave, if you could start the Public Works Board presentation, please. This week started out with a loud bang, electrical bang, and it has been a long week since. So I will start with this. I'm sure most of you know, hold on that slide, please, Dave. That Sunday evening, no, next slide, please, Dave, I'm sorry. Yes, hold on that one. Sunday evening, we experienced a considerably strong power outage. This started on Owen Street, and on pole number 1166, I believe it is, we had basically a We Energies line drop down into one of our Lake Mills lines. Now, all of those poles with the green box along Owen Street are owned by We Energies, and we rent space on them. We Energies has 3 25 kV phases on their lines on the very top of the poles, and then we have next down 3 phases of 25 kV, and then we have a next line of 4 kV, which is a lower voltage. So Sunday evening, I start getting my first phone calls And we arrive out on site and to observe arcing, what we call blue dragons in the industry. And eventually the power did go out. We Energies was called. The fire was on site. It was deemed after we were able to shut off power that they could leave. But what happened next slide please, Dave, is everything on that blue line there, which is circuit 1, lost power. Next slide, please. And this represents the affected area. About 35% of our customers lost power within that area, which is represented by the yellow highlight. In the course of the evening, we weren't exactly sure what we were dealing with right away. Eventually it started to become clear with phone calls and then sending out the crews. I had both crews in, and then we called for help from Waterloo and Jefferson and We Energies as well. Next slide, please. And I'll start to walk you through what exactly happened. So as I was describing, on this top cross arm are We Energies lines. And in the course of the evening, this top line here, right there at that insulator, which is ceramic, broke off and fell into our 25 line. This causes a lot of arcing, but it only caused intermittent power outages because our 25 line was a similar phase to this one and could handle the loads. So it would recover, but then eventually, as this line's jumping around some, it falls down into our 4 kV, which cannot handle that load, and that 4 kV is part of our circuit 1, and that killed the entire circuit. The rest of the next 36 hours, my crew was on call, out in the field that whole time. We were out addressing just what exactly had happened. We ended up finding meters that had been blown out of their houses. We had 22 of these in total. And then we are now still dealing with meters that are malfunctioning. We have not gotten a total on that. Next slide, please. And then I want you to also pay attention to this pole right there. I'm going to bring that up in a moment. Next slide, please. So yes, this is just another representation. It's this line here that busted off of that insulator. We have a transformer back here, and it's the arrestor, the surge arrestor that started sparking. We're fortunate. We have very good infrastructure here electrically. All of our transformers have surge arresters on them, and the people who were reporting that transformers are bursting were actually seeing the spark arresters blowing up, which they're designed to do. They're designed to take that punishment and save our transformers, which did happen. We did not lose one transformer in this whole thing, which I'm very glad for. Next slide, please. So this is a meter socket, an example. You see it's blown out. It's sitting there on the ground. You see the charring. And ironically, the one next to it wasn't harmed. But that's just the way electricity works at times. But another situation we immediately had to deal with that night was we could not replace that meter right away because we do not know what kind of damage was in the house. And we do not want to be liable for reinstalling the meter, and then they might have had further damage in their home. So we had to put out a notice right away that homes that had their meters broken would have to get a electrician in and fill out an affidavit for the city of Lake Mills, verifying that it is safe to reinstall this meter. So that took about 24 hours or so. It was within 2 days that we had just about every meter reinstalled, but that was another procedure we had to take. Next, please. So this is going to be a little hard to describe, but the reason I asked you to keep memory of that one picture with the pole in the background, this pole is shorter. It only has our lines on it. But then that following Tuesday, this line up here is the We Energies line. And when We Energies was repairing the damaged pole, they did not realize that this line was tucked underneath our line. Now, fortunately for us, a former employee here, his name is Chris Evanson, I guess he is a foreman in the electric department, and being an old lineman, he's watching the wires as he's driving by, and he noticed that this line was tucked under, and that's charged. And it was just a matter of time before that burned out, either the cross arm or made contact with our line. So we had to once again issue, well, this time we got ahead of it. Drake started putting out an alert sense to warn people that we were going to be shutting off power again while this was fixed. So we had 2 power outages. One was by design, the second one. But that was pretty much what we've been dealing with this week in the electric department. Did anyone have any questions on this before I moved on? 'Cause I know it's been a big event in the town here. We are dealing with a lot of claims currently, and
At our house, we experienced some issues a couple days in advance to the main one as well.
yes.
Was there something else going on a couple days in advance?
There was 24 hours in advance.
Something like that, yeah.
Yes. I can describe it more in detail at a later time.
Okay.
Will we be recovering any costs from E-Energies for this issue that they caused?
Well, fortunately, my associate is a brilliant attorney, and he's the one I'm going to turn to.
We're contemplating a claim. We're collecting costs and we'll send a claim for damages, certainly. I think there has been initial conversations and we is not eager to take responsibility for it, but we'll figure it out.
I would just like to make a comment as I was one of the 35% that lost my power.
Yeah.
And I called, I didn't know the extent of the outage. We've had in our neighborhood, since I've lived here for 8 years, only 2 times power have gone out, and both of them have been trees that have fallen in the neighborhood and have stopped the power, and it was always back within 3 hours, so it's got a super service experience. But calling the line, there was no answer, and the second time someone did pick up, take the name, and so I think a communication, I don't know how to alert citizens that we all know that's going on, or if you want them to call, how to make sure to leave a message. All of our neighbors were starting to text and say, hey, I'm calling, no one's picking up, and so just on the communication side, something I think that might need some additional thought behind it, so that especially in larger scale, like 35% is a pretty large number of calls that I can't imagine you'd be able to easily handle, but something that might alert citizens to know that they can be rest assured that someone is on it.
Well, a couple of issues that compounded this problem was that we also lost our phone service and our internet. So I was basically dead in the water. Our phone calls that were going to Light and Water were relayed then or forwarded to our answering service. They became overwhelmed with all the calls.
Yeah.
This is something that we are addressing now in our post-review.
Good.
And we are looking to make remediations for that. So.
Yeah, so our phone and internet service for city facilities all comes to City Hall and then gets dispersed out via an internal fiber loop between our facilities, which works okay. But in this instance, the power surge destroyed a piece of equipment that's essential to continuing our phone and internet service to the Light and Water building. So that meant that Light and Water, the building itself, was out of phone and internet for basically until Wednesday? Wednesday in the morning, when that replacement piece that we had to find what broke, which is a tiny little component that's about this big, that we are able to identify, and then we had to replace that. We are looking for options at separating out our facilities so that they can stand on their own without, if something goes wrong at City Hall, that something goes wrong at our other buildings, but nothing to report on that front yet. We're trying to figure out what our options are for that. So we will see what we can find.
Are you looking at backup systems for each?
We're looking at not having them all on individual services.
Well, any individual service always has the potential to fail, so a common technique is to have a backup system that works over a different medium. It's not, it's maybe slower, but it's there just in case, you know, a cell phone, for example.
Yeah, we have employees with cell phones, but they're not publicly available numbers. They're, they're on-call phones that we can disperse people out on.
I could have brought my cell phone home access point over.
Yeah, that probably would have helped.
That's all it would have taken.
I was surprised at how many people had my cell phone number.
It hasn't been that long.
Well, we'll move on to,
I just wanted to make a quick comment too. I want to say kudos to all the crews for getting out there from the city. I'm sure that's not fun stuff to deal with. And I've been on the receiving end of calls. I mean, even at the township when the power's gone out over in our area, and they are not fun calls to receive most of the time. So just some simple answering device or, text system to be looked at in the future is plenty fine, because crews have to be on the job doing stuff instead of answering phones to get things up as quickly as possible. And people just have to remember to be patient. Things take time, and there's going to be a lot more of this probably in the future, I'm guessing, with infrastructure issues. So, people just have to be patient with it all. But kudos to the crews for dealing with something that wasn't so fun. And thankfully, there wasn't mass destruction and injury and stuff like that, too.
yes. Okay. On a more cheerful note, we did also put up Santa Claus, a longstanding tradition here in Lake Mills, I understand. Our electric department was able to put this up on a day where we had some snow, so it was a cheerful day. Next. And next. And next. Now, in street department, in the last few weeks, this is on College Street. If you might remember, I told you how we had some punch list items that had to be dealt with, and one was some very low manhole covers that were basically causing a significant drop if a car drove over it. So we had the contractor, as part of the contract, remediate these. They did it in a rather interesting way. Next. Where this device here, this circular cutting machine, will go and cut out around the existing manhole. Next. And next. And then they're able to, by doing that, with a nice clean circular cut of the asphalt, they then put in a riser after they measure it. Next. And they replace the casting. Next. And then this is the end product. Then they backfill with concrete. Because of the cold weather, we took cold weather precautions for the concrete with blankets for a period of 7 days or so. And I feel it was a good success. I was very pleased with the end result. Next. And next. And then next, going on. And then this has been the balance of the time we've been spending with the decent weather we're having. We're really pushing to fill in as many potholes as we can before plow season starts. Oh, next.
Can I ask a question about College Street before you?
Absolutely.
There were also it looked like some patches between the curb and the sidewalk that were
Terrace.
re-excavated. What was that? Because I saw some new grass, overlays in sections. What happened?
Yes. One of the residents requested that we mill out the tree stump that was in one of the terraces, so we did some late restoration there.
Okay,
That was primarily it, just restoration from the project.
okay, thanks.
Moving on, next. Wastewater, exciting things are happening if you are a wastewater nerd. Next. First off, this time of year is when you try and get rid of your sludge, and This is very important. Our tanks are filling up. We do this per our DNR permits, but we spent about 2 weeks getting rid of our 3 tanks of sludge that were very full. Next. I won't explain too much in detail of what they're discharging into the tanks there, but next. Now, the exciting things that are happening, these are our oxidation ditches. Every other year, we clean one out. We'll dewater it. And what happens is, at the base of the ditch, it's just natural that you will get grit that will build up at the base. So it's important that you dewater this and you start to remove this. So this has been a process that we've been taking on for the last 2 weeks. It is now completed. Next. And you'll see what we do is we lower down a skid steer and we start scraping all the grit. This is mostly just sand and dirt, some other particles in there, but we take samples of it then, submit it to the landfill, and if they approve it, which they normally do, then we are able to haul it to the landfill. Next. And next. And next. Next. Things have been fairly quiet with the water department. They've been doing a lot of maintenance on our wells. During that power surge, we did have 2 wells that were affected and the diesel generators kicked in. So when that happens, it's a good time to maintain or do some maintenance on your diesel generators. They often can get overlooked when we're busy until all of a sudden we need them. So they've been busy doing that, but everything worked fine in an emergency response. Just wrapping up the presentation here, the report here, we, in the Public Works Department, we have now recently hired 3 new people, 1 in wastewater, 1 in water, and then we're in, what's my other one?
Mechanic.
Oh, yes, we are, thank you, we are hiring a fleet mechanic. Typically, or traditionally in Lake Mills, they've had a mechanic in the street department. I have had very good success in my career with a fleet mechanic, someone who can also handle vehicles from other departments, such as police and fire. And so working with Drake here, we made some budgetary arrangements to where we now have a fleet mechanic that's going to get some training in fire pumps and that, and we believe we're going to be much more productive this way. But we have filled that position now. We have filled the position also of utility billing clerk, and we are currently going to be advertising for a position in the street department. That'll be vacated, well, that has been vacated just yesterday. And that is my report.
Thanks, Randy. Any questions? All right, moving on then to item 6, discussion, update yard waste center.
All right. Did you say yard waste? Okay. Dave, if you could start the yard waste presentation. Okay, so Mr. Yandre and I, my street foreman, spent about 3 or 4 days on this. We toured other yard wastes of neighboring municipalities. We spent a good deal of time getting costs together and creating ideas for what, taking in what suggestions were sent to us. So next slide, please. This is Jefferson's yard waste. It had open access and cameras. Next. But they pretty much just allowed a drop off of yard waste, some brush, it looked like. Next. And next. Yes, this was the access into Jefferson's. Next. And this is Fort Atkinson. They are gated. They were not open during the week, didn't look like, and but I believe, next please, I think I have a, okay. They were open on the weekends, do you remember, Mark, is that what?
No, Fort's open. You want me to go through the times that they're open?
Yeah, sure. Okay, we'll go back to Jefferson right away. Jefferson is open Wednesday from 8 o'clock until the end of the workday. Friday, they open at 2 p.m. And usually what happens then is it stays open all weekend. And also at Jefferson, they have a $250 fine for non-residents and contractors that dump there. And when I was talking to the people over in Jefferson on the phone, they do fine them. It's not just, a sign saying that there's a fine, they will fine them. They are open year-round. The city of Fort Atkinson, they're open 8 a.m. to 3 o'clock Monday, Tuesday, Thursday, Friday. On Saturday, they're open 9 to 3. And Wednesday, they are open 8 a.m. until sunset. There's no attendant on site there. They have a $200 fine for any dumping of stuff that's not supposed to be dumped there. And they're only open from April to December. Then I have some information on Watertown I can give you right away. Watertown's open Monday from 3:30 to 7. Wednesday, 3:30 to 7 p.m. And then on Saturdays, 9 a.m. to 1 p.m. They are also only open April through December, to the 1st of December. And then they actually have a contractor come in with a tub grinder to grind material that they collect. But you're not going to like the price tag of it. It's $30,000 a year to have a tub grinder come in. Johnson's Creek, they're open 24/7. They sell you a card for $10, and you keep that card until you move. And it's only a one-time $10 charge. But if you get caught, if they find out you're giving your card to somebody that isn't supposed to be going in there, you lose the privilege. Town of Ashland, they have one. They used to have it right by their town hall. It was getting abused there, so they shut that system down. And now they're only open 2 days a month on Zimmerman Lane. That used to be their old town dump. And actually, that's also where Johnson's Creek hauls their stuff. And then Johnson's Creek Fire Department burns the brush for them. I'll give you DeForest, because I'm quite familiar with that one. They're open Monday from 5 p.m. to 7 p.m. And then Tuesdays 8 to 10 a.m. And then Tuesday night, they're open again from 5 p.m. to 7 p.m. Wednesday, 5 p.m. to 7 p.m. Thursday, 5 p.m. to 7 p.m. And then on Saturday, they're open 8 a.m. to 5 p.m. There is an attendant on site when it is open, and residents need to go to their village and get a sticker for their vehicles. No sticker on the vehicle, and then no entry into the system. So that's what I have right now for yardway sites that we visited and did some research on. Stand by there, Mark, if you
Yep.
will. I'm going to call on you again in a little bit. Next slide, please.
So quick question, did anybody besides DeForest have attendance?
No, that was the only one that I had found, yes.
Thank you.
Just a little history. The city of Lake Mills, when it first started, did have an attendant
Yes,
back when it was right behind here.
yes.
And that's when it was actually a yard waste and recycling center. So, and then actually that gentleman also moved down to the site where it is on Stony Road. He was there for a while. There was like you might as well call it an ice shack that he sat in and, waited for people.
Thanks.
So at Fort Atkinson, you can see the mulch piles back here. Next. And next. And I did a little research on Johnson Creek. They do seem to have a prevailing problem with people sharing the card that they're issued. But they do have a gated system right now. Next. So what we are proposing is this is the end of CP Avenue, and we are proposing to clear the topsoil and unsuitable soils for about, it was 160 feet, and then clearing the pad for the actual drop-off site here. Next. And these are just my diagrams to show you what that, give you a visual.
How big is the current one?
160 by 55.
Okay, thanks.
I'll have those dimensions out here soon.
Oh, okay.
Another slide. Next. But you see, we do have a lot of open space there to use. Next. And this is the beginning of what we had proposed building. The dimensions of the pad mirror the ones that currently exist. Again, it's about 155, 160 wide by 60 feet deep. We currently have 3 bays, but one is for other construction debris to be dropped off. But we propose to build this roadway and pad with 3-inch stone for sub-base and then 1.25 for the base. And the red lines represent fence. Next. And then if, we want to consider, we have the ability to run power down these 2 poles here, and we could put security cameras there. And yes, then go with that fencing. Now, I just want to point out, we could have considerable savings if we were just to run the fence across CP Avenue here and then put some barriers up here. So we do have a few options there, but for the cost slide that I'll be presenting here, I did not put that in there of the savings we'll have if we just ran a fence across the road, but just bear that in mind, please. Next. So what we propose to do is strip the pad in the driveway, build about a 12-inch sub-base of 3-inch crushed stone, and then you cap that with 6 inches or so of 1.25 inches. Then we compact the road base and the building base, and then we would contract out or just buy the material for the fence and the gate. And then the options would be the security cameras or anything else we'd like there. Next, please. And these are the rough costs of everything. Obviously, the lion's share of the cost would go for the fencing. The stone, there are some variables there for cost. Some stone we do have, some we can acquire maybe at a cheaper price, we'll see. But Mark was able to get these prices from local quarries. Yes, go ahead, Mark. You're going to say something? Oh, I'm sorry.
Sorry.
I thought you raised your hand there. All right. But yes, that's where we're at with that. I would propose with current staffing and current location that we could have a staff member open this access up every morning and close it at the end of their workday. But if we want to entertain extra staff or some other sort of controlled entrance and exit system, then you could create your own hours, what you'd feel were best. But any questions? Can you go back 2 slides, please, Dave? I just want to keep it on that one. I will bring up too, it just reoccurred to me. We would like to eliminate, currently we are receiving some concrete in that, and this is an extra burden. In the future, this would be an extra financial burden for the city. I would like to eliminate that service. I would suggest we did anyways. This is something that either residents could find ways to get rid of the concrete on their own, take it to a landfill or such. But right now, I mean, with this design, we're just thinking of yard waste and brush.
I believe we changed John's disposal contract to allow some disposal of some materials like that, limited quantities.
In bulk pickup is, I'm not sure what construction materials are allowed.
Right.
That's a fair question. I do recall looking at the contract and there being a new allowance, but I don't recall
Right.
specifically.
It's something like 50
allowed
pounds or
Yeah.
less per container and, you
Yeah,
know,
that's correct.
things like that. Not large quantities like obviously the current site takes. But I just wanted to mention that there is already that alternative available to residents.
I just have a quick question on the size of that. I just remember when I used to work at the nursery, we did a cooperative with the city of Waterloo. And I remember there being 3 big windrows out there of basically mostly leaves, but there was some brush in there too. But it was a massive amount of material, and that was probably on a couple acre piece. And I see the size of this is like 0.2 of an acre. I'm just thinking, the examples that you showed also look like they had things windrowed, which is the easiest way to compost things. And then, you end up with a minute amount, near the end that, can be top dressed back onto egg fields or whatever. But having bins and stuff, how is that going to be hauled away, or how are you going to deal with it? And, if you would add in the township, which we are going to be looking at cooperative agreements. We just discussed that the other night at our town board meeting. I know Drake was there. This is probably one of the items that's adding on another 2,000 plus people to something like that. So I'm just curious as to the thought process on it.
So the windrowing is performed by heavy machinery. This pad is designed for passenger cars or vehicles for drop in and drop off. We do have a large field in the background, I pointed out in our last meeting, that would be available for stockpiling our materials, our product that we'd be creating, either mulch or what have you, and we would be windrowing that as well, just to allow it to dry. But this pad is designed with the purpose of your average resident being able to drop material off. What were you going to say, Mark?
Well, it's, going back to the concrete first, a lot of the concrete that comes into the Ardway site is not from homeowners. It's from construction companies and stuff like that, and they already have a place to go. They can go to House Pit on Highway N, and any other quarry around the area that will crush it. But then they have to pay to do it, so that's why they dump it there. Then we have to haul it and get rid of it. Going to, I believe, the direction we were going with our site now was just a drop-off site and still using the range at this point in time, unless we're requesting to do something different. Like Randy said, there would be more than enough room to dump the stuff there, but then that's going to be, you're going to have somebody there, turning it and taking care of it. Granted, if we go with the township, that'd be great. But I can tell you now that there are actually town residents, not just the town of Lake Mills. I mean, town of Milford, town of Ashland people. I mean, we see them, so.
If the access to the site is controlled, would you think that our usage, even with the town being part of it?
Even with the town being part of it, I would
Would you expect our
honestly
usage?
probably say that yes, there will be less. Because the
Right.
people know that, they know when we leave at the end of the day, and you can come back. We've come back to the site from the night before to the morning. It was empty then when we left at the end of the day. And there's times where you got about 2-3 hours of hauling again.
Yeah.
They know when we're gone.
Yeah.
So I mean, like Randy said, if we put the gate across CP Avenue just to get started at a low cost, you know, you're still gonna eliminate a lot of stuff coming in. People know, I mean, it's, to tell you the truth, it's almost, I don't know how you say it, a county joke, that if you need to get rid of your stuff, take it to Stony Road. You know, we've had people coming as far away as Marshall, and contractors coming from in towards Waukesha coming out here as they're driving through. So,
I've personally chased off more than one contractor from there, so.
You chase them off, but we don't find them.
Well,
And we can, right?
Police department can.
well, we're
I mean,
gonna bring that.
Dan might be able to,
Illegal
Point out.
dumping.
he might be able to correct me on this, where is it?
Mark did also we wanted him to bring up some, specs that we think are lacking and some, that maybe we need to address.
I just found this afternoon, so I didn't get a chance to talk with Dan or anything, but, chapter 636, yard waste, and, it goes through 636-1, the purpose, disposal, what can be done, and I did not find anything in there where there was actual monetary fine if somebody was dumping. I don't know if that's.
You have to go to the general penalty provision.
Oh, okay,
All
so
of-
there's probably something there then, Dan, or,
Yes.
okay, all right. So,
Yeah, I think, you know, obviously, if we had cameras, a gate, you know, a low-cost option, you get a gate at where CP Avenue ends, and you could put Jersey barriers or some other on the grass area so that you couldn't just, you know,
Around.
easily drive around the gate. Johnson Creek has some plantings that block it. So that might save money. And then we have, I think it's $20,000 in the capital budget that we just had an estimate on when we were going through the budget. And we do we have, I think, Randy, correct, we have a good amount of the 1.25 inch stone, but we don't, in our possession, that we
Yes.
could use, but the 3-inch stone is what we would have to purchase, so there's some savings there that we might not have to go out and buy the 1.25 inch stone, so that $1,400 we may already have, and then we could drastically reduce that 16 to 18,000 for the chain link fence if we just had the gate and use some Jersey barriers along the side of it just to get started, which may leave enough to install those cameras. And maybe we could expand if there was concern about the drop-off area not being large enough. Maybe there's enough left over to expand that a little bit as well. But we do plan to continue to haul away until the current the range is declared to be full, and then we'll explore other options on where we could take it after that as well. So we don't envision long-term storage of the material on this site. It still would be taken away to another location. Hopefully we'd have less hauling. The contractors are really a big problem because it's just the volume of material that we receive. And then with the gate and the cameras, hopefully we could reduce the amount of the other types of things that cause increased cost for the city, like shingles or washing machines, dryers, things that we then have to pay to dispose of, that were dropped in the middle of the night, that we don't see.
So I was down there when somebody was dropping off something that they shouldn't be, and I said to the person, the sign says you're not supposed to drop that off. And the person says, but there's already something here like that. Oh, that makes it okay. No. I'm fine with completely getting rid of the whole concrete asphalt section that
I
gets
agree.
abused. Because that's part that you just talked about that gets abused. Do any of the other sites that you visited?
No.
Right.
No.
So
We were-
let's get
We
rid
were
of
the
it.
only one
I
that,
support that.
had that.
And it just, people take advantage of it, non-contractors and contractors. So let's just get rid of it. There already exists the alternative with John's disposal for small quantities.
I have a question. What is, I understand the gate, but what is your recommended approach for access to the gate? Is it a card reader? Is it attending? Is it open from 8 to 5 in certain hours and people have free for all and the cameras hopefully will catch people who aren't supposed to be there? I mean, it's a little bit of, the problems that we're trying to solve. I'm curious that monitoring and managing the people who actually have the rights, whether we're, I love the partner, I really support the partnership with the town, city of Lake Mills town, people to be able to access it, honestly. There's limited resources, and we're one community, even though we are governed separately, but I support the town being a part of it, but that means you need a way to control and to manage the expenses of having additional citizens come and utilize it. So just your thoughts on what you were thinking for how to manage the gate. 'Cause I can picture the gate and I saw the chain, but that kind of is like free access when it's open and closed. So thoughts on what that looks like?
Well, the thought of free-for-all frightens me. I would
Yeah.
like to have something regulated and controlled. Me personally, like I was saying, with our current staff, I would like to have this, we would open this daily during the week and close it, around 3:30. That is something I could do right now. But if we were to go forward, I mean, obviously, the bigger expense is the gate out of everything. And having a automatic controlled gate is more compounds the expense. But if we had that, that would be very nice. If there was funds available, I would go with the key fob system. And there would be your initial purchase and then a yearly maintenance fee for owning that key fob. And that key fob would also have to be matched with a license plate. So whoever purchased that would be putting down their license plate and name and address. That system could be very functional. So, there are possibilities, as Mark and I were talking about this, of people who might work for volunteer or low wage on weekends. Sitting out there managing the gate. So that's something else that could work. And I would like to point out, we could build all of this minus the cameras right now with current funds, I believe, with just a manually open gate. So if you were to give Public Works the direction, we could probably have this completed in the spring.
Would you trade off the large gate? I'm just thinking of the cost. Trade off the large gate, just have your CP gate with your barrier berms on the side and make that key fob. Because I don't know if you priced out like what that key fob security system would look like. Could you swing the cost from the full fence to kind of get the,
I'd have to get back to you on that, Mary. I did not price out any key fob systems.
Yeah, Johnson Creek in 2017 paid $10,000 for a gate and some fencing. That was on a timed system. And then more recently, added a card reader system for $5,300. So, the timed gate also would offer, so it would at least open and close itself.
Yeah.
The key fob system creates there's a benefit, and then obviously you have to manage those key fobs, and how do you deal with replacements and broken ones and things of that nature. So we'd have to think about how we want those to be identified. Does a key fob get, assigned to a license plate so that they're coming in with the key fob? It's got to be in the car that's associated with the key fob that the camera could pick up then if we thought there was abuse going on, or is it to a person and maybe sporadically someone goes out when people are out there and asked to see their ID along with what key fob they're using to see if they gave it, if it's being given to somebody else. that could all be worked out as we got more used to it. Adding staffing is difficult.
Yeah.
We don't have the capacity to add even, small part-time, low-wage staffing for an extended period of time. We would have to remove funds from somewhere else in order to make that happen. So an automated system with cameras is certainly beneficial. Like I said, we've got $20,000 budgeted in the capital budget. See how far that goes, and then try to get some more updated numbers on an automatic gate, either timed or key fobbed, and then perhaps make a request to the city council for use of ARPA funds for anything additional above that $20,000 to make it a more robust system. But the $20,000 can get us a simple system right now, and then we see how much more we would need to be more sophisticated.
Mr. Chair, thank you. I guess I see some struggles here. I mean, we currently have a 24/7 access, and to limit it to 3:30, most people I know don't get home from work until after 3:30, and they do their yard work during the evenings or during the weekend. And if we're talking about not having access during that time, I'm not sure where those people are going to be able to use the site. I guess I would I guess I would like to understand what the key fob system is going to cost and what it would be like and how that would function. I think that might be a good alternative here if we want to secure the site and if we want to limit it to the residents that are part of this program, if that's the city, if that's the township, that would be determined later. But I think we need to get a handle on that before we start moving forward and changing the site at this point. Hopefully we can get that information quickly.
Yeah, I would ballpark it just based off the Johnson Creek numbers. The gate and the card reader system, is gonna be between $15,000 and $20,000. So the card reader was implemented more recently than the gate. So the gate was 2017, but that was timed. They switched to a card reader system more recently. So we're in the $10,000 to $15,000 range for that. And then we'll have to collect information on a lot of companies with fobs, even for we've been looking at doing fobs for employees to enter the building and whatnot instead of hard keys. A lot of companies are switching to a subscription-based system as well that has an annual support fee. So we will find out what those are, but I'd say upfront startup costs for the gate is just the gate and the key fob system is going to be between $10,000 and $15,000.
Would we have security cameras on top of that as well?
I would suggest we have the cameras out there.
Okay.
Can I ask just about the layout? I'm just looking at the cost and the fence, 430 feet of it. Is that in addition to the stone block? I'm just asking like the heights, and is that really necessary? And I'm also I've watched enough people pull up to the one that's existing, and I'm just like, the way it looks right now, that's just inviting damage right there in front and maneuverability issues. So I really like the idea of that cutting off at CP and maybe offsetting the cost of that fence, but maybe I don't understand the fence around the block so much.
Well, this fence is purely for security. The block protects the fence. This way we're able to push up against the block as we're loading up the brush material. But yeah, the fence has no structural value or functional value other than securing the site.
So it's just taller, so you can't
Yes.
go over the top.
Yeah.
The price we got for the fence was anywhere from $38 to $42 a foot for six foot commercial chain link fence that's installed.
And how tall's the block?
The blocks are 4 feet tall, they're 2 feet each.
Okay.
Yeah, I think if we limit the ability of vehicles to get to where the drop off is, that'll deter quite a bit. Otherwise, if you get to the end of CP, you got out and started carrying things around to get to it, if we had cameras, they would spot that activity when we're checking them. But I think that would be enough of a deterrent, more than we have now, certainly. So it's certainly gonna be an improvement. This site is gonna be an improvement, even if we only had, if it was open as it is now, and with cameras, it's still gonna be an improvement over what we have right now and the issues we have where, at least here, if we ever had overflow, it's not coming into a lane of traffic. So there's benefits here, even if it was the most basic rudimentary system like we have now.
And CP Avenue has curb on both sides, so they would have to drive over the curb as well,
Yes,
That point there, yeah.
up to where you can see it up there.
and there'd be things that would deter that, Jersey barriers and things of that that we already have in our possession that we could place. They may not be the most aesthetically pleasing, but they would be a low cost deterrent to put on the other side.
We could make it look nice. I mean, we'd flare out with boulders or something on each side.
Is this as a general concept, something the Public Works Board is interested in continuing to flesh out? We'll get specific numbers on a gate with a key fob system, sorry.
Oh, no, I support where you're going, although I would like to add on, I agree with Greg, the hours I think are really important.
Yes.
I'm not sure I'm an advocate for when it's dark out, so it's like maybe dawn to dusk is when people might be doing yard work. I'm not sure people need to be driving. I don't know if we're gonna have lighting. I think that adds on a whole bunch of other risks if you're jumping your stuff off in the middle of the night. But I do feel that we are at risk of, we have open access now, and I think at least limiting it to daylight hours would be something I would also be an advocate for.
We'll get costs for a time system as well as the key fob system so that you can compare the two. A time system we could set up so that it opens at dawn and closes at dusk. And then the key fob system would be, and you could access it at any time as long as you had a fob. So we'll cost out both of those specifically.
So just in general, key fob means a key fob or a license plate reader or a keypad where people get handed out 6-digit numbers or some sort of 6+ random numbers. All those types of things, some sort of security along those lines, not necessarily specifically key fob.
Sure. Some sort of access system that
Right, access
a
control
person
system.
would have that's specific to them, that would allow them to enter at any time as long as they had either the physical fob or a code or whatever that may be.
Everybody already has a license plate. Also. So, does the staff have general understanding from our discussion which way to go?
We will work on pricing out access systems in a gate specifically. Mark, did you have anything to add?
I guess, so, are you giving us direction that we can actually start prepping the site without, or we gotta wait yet?
No, they can't.
Okay.
We can talk about it, but
Right. As far as concrete and asphalt, is that something that you want to change at the current site or wait until this site comes online?
If we have the ability, I would like to eliminate that provision, yeah.
There can be an ordinance amendment.
Yeah.
Yeah, let's,
we would have to bring an ordinance amendment to the council.
sounds like it'd be a good idea to get that in the works
start.
then, if that's what it takes.
Isn't there 4 bins there? There's a small one on one side for, I think, mulch, and then you got yard waste, then you got
Branches.
branches and
And you got-
sticks, and then you have the cement, right?
Yes.
So with the
There'd
mulch-
still be, we could still put mulch there, the wood chips is what you're talking about, right, Greg?
Yeah.
Yeah, there'd still be, you could still do that.
Mulch
For
is some,
people to come
yeah,
get
the
it.
wood chip's something I can store off of this site, off pad, with all the land, with all the acreage in the area.
So it could be just at the end of that, at that road?
Yeah.
Okay.
And for costing, also consider security cameras. Anything else? All right, I think we're done on yard waste then. Next is item 7, discussion recommendation on wastewater treatment plant capital improvement project.
Greg,
Travis,
do you want me, yeah, do you want me to dive right in, or do you want to start us off?
I would like you to dive right in, please.
Okay, Dave, do you want to share on your end, or do you want me to share the presentation myself?
You can go ahead and share it, Travis.
Okay. 1 second. All right, are you seeing the presentation?
I think that's
Nope.
No.
municipal water.
And there we go. Now it's up. If you go back to presentation mode. There you go.
Does that work? It's
Yep.
working now? Okay. All right, so talking about the wastewater treatment plant facility planning, again, I've got a few updates adding on to the discussion that we had in November. So I've got some follow-up on the project costs. And then there were a couple of questions from last time that we can talk a little bit about on biosolids drying, and then some of the non-monetary factors for the options that we're looking at. So this slide here is just a repeat. You've seen this slide, but I just wanted to kind of refresh our memories when we were looking at the draft rate impact, comparing phasing at the existing site with the aerobic granular sludge system versus moving the treatment plant to a new site, constructing a brand new site, and phasing at the existing site over multiple phases allows you to ramp up the rate increase over the course of 15 to 20 years, and projects can proceed as needed throughout that time frame. There's more flexibility from that standpoint versus going to a new plant. The rate increase would I'd assume that it would start once that decision is made, and you'd have to have it complete by the time construction's complete. So it's a much narrower window to get that rate increase accomplished. So just a refresher on that. And so this slide shows the capital and present worth costs. So the table here is the information that was provided prior to the last meeting. It provides a breakdown of one possible phasing approach for remaining at the existing treatment plant site with aerobic granular sludge, separated into 3 phases. And the exact nature of that phasing would be finalized during the facility planning process once there's direction on whether we're staying at the existing site or moving. And again, obviously the new site would be all in one project, and both scenarios here are approximately the same capital cost, not taking into account inflation. And then graphically, I've got shown first in blue, staying at the existing site with aerobic granular sludge and eventually moving the outfall, that should say to, the Crawfish River. So that's that first option. And then the other three options are the new plant with various technologies. And like we've talked about in the past, the various technologies have similar capital and O&M costs. It's really a preference on, if you were to go to a new site, it opens the door to pretty much any technology because you're not constrained by footprint. So it's more of a operator preference, city preference on what technology you would go with. But the present worth there is the larger bars on each graphic, and they also have similar present worths between the various options, and that's because we're treating the same amount of wastewater in each scenario here. So at a wastewater plant, your operation and maintenance costs are primarily the energy needed for aeration, and then your any chemical use that you might have, and then labor. So, and then just the energy use, other various energy uses amongst the plant, the various pumps and other motors like that. So really, it's not surprising that there's not that significant of a difference in the total present worth costs, which would take into account the O&M for the various options. You do see aerobic granular sludge with slightly less O&M costs. And we can circle back to any of these, but there was a question on biosolids drying. So the reason why that has been looked at for the existing site is the much smaller footprint that it allows. It's reducing the sludge from probably around 4% solids in its liquid form to 90% solids. So you're removing call it 85% of the volume by doing that. And just with the regulatory issues that there have been with biosolids disposal and the likelihood of those regulations becoming stricter, sludge drying produces a Class A biosolids, which is much easier to dispose of. You could just have a normal residential landscaper come and take it away, and there's no, DNR paperwork as far as, ultimate disposal of that versus, disposing on farm fields right now. There's of course a lot of regulatory paperwork involved there and regulations that need to be followed. So that is also one of the advantages of Class A solids. And I guess I just wanted to add that we don't need to decide this in order to make a decision on staying at the existing site or not. It's just if you ultimately do stay at the existing site, we need to think of ways to reduce the footprint as much as possible, because reducing the footprint allows you to stay on that site longer. It allows you to increase your capacity per square foot at that site, and drying would be a big component of doing that. We've talked about potentially needing off-site biosolids storage if you were to stay at that site and maintain your existing technologies, and this process would go a long ways to eliminating the additional trucking and hassle of having off-site biosolids storage. So it's certainly a trend that's increasing in Wisconsin. There are many facilities that have installed this technology and or are in the process of installing it. And,
Travis, could I just ask a quick question on biosolids?
yes,
Is biosolids drying included in the new site costs?
no, what we assumed for the new site cost was dewatering the biosolids. So taking it from its liquid form and basically running it through a centrifuge or a belt press that would get it to about 20% solids, and then disposal of that on farm fields. And the reason why we costed it that way for the new site is because we're assuming that you would not be constrained by footprint on a new site, and you'd have plenty of space for storage of the biosolids. So basically you would have 180 days of storage of the dewatered biosolids, and in the spring and fall they would be land applied on farm fields.
Thank you.
So just wanted to revisit then the kind of the pros and cons of these two options, more of focusing also on AGS at the existing site, because I know that wasn't specifically included in the original evaluation, and we've been looking at that more as a way to tighten up the footprint on the existing site. So just going over pros and cons of existing site with AGS versus a new treatment plant. In both instances, I'm assuming that they would eventually discharge to the Crawfish River. So running down the benefits of the existing treatment plant site, you have a significant investment already in the existing site. You own the land, there's an administration building, there is infrastructure that can be reused, so that's a benefit. Because eventually you're going to discharge to the crawfish, you'll have a less stringent phosphorus limit. And by discharging to the crawfish, you'd have less stringent future limits as well, such as ammonia. Kind of the big key difference in these two options is the significantly reduced rate impact, especially the sudden nature of the rate impact that's definitely reduced in the existing plant option. If you go with AGS and drying, if you go with those treatment technologies, you can still maintain all your treatment facilities on one site, even at the existing facility, and not have to go outside the existing fence line, at least for many years. And again, with those technologies, you do have room for future expansion. We've talked about how to expand the processes beyond the 3 phases that I mentioned here into the future to add additional capacity well beyond the 20-year planning period by implementing those technologies. And then the benefit of the new site, we've discussed these in the past and they haven't really changed. Main benefits there being you have a much larger buffer between the treatment plant and city residences. Really, there's no limit on space for future expansion. Land, there's a lot of land available around the city, and if you were to get a 20 or 40 acre parcel, that would provide you for growth for the next century. It's a potential to improve Rock Creek, and I think that ties back into, I think with either option that we're looking at, moving the discharge from Rock Creek to the Crawfish River is probably the preferred option. Again, you're having all the treatment facilities on one site, and as I mentioned earlier, there's flexibility in the technology. You could really put in anything you wanted on a new site. And then on the drawbacks, so if you stay on the existing site, you will likely need some additional land somewhere for biosolids storage. unless you install biosolids drying, not immediately, not in the next year, but probably within the planning period, within the 20-year planning period, we'd really have to think hard about how to manage the biosolids program on the existing site. Land acquisition would be needed for a future treatment plant. So I think regardless of, even if you go with this existing site option, it would be good to, think about where ultimately, 40 years from now, 50 years from now, if you do decide you want to move the plant, think about where that might be and strategically purchasing some land to accommodate that down the road. The existing site was on an old landfill, so that will likely add some cost to the construction. It's not insurmountable, but it is a challenge that will have to be dealt with. It had to be dealt with in the project 30 years ago, and there'll be similar issues that crop up in any future projects. It is more difficult to expand in the future. That's why we're looking at different technologies. Effluent pumping's required. You'll need easements for an effluent force main. The Aqua Narita process is a proprietary process, and I know there was a question about this. They have applied for a patent, so assuming that patent gets approved, then you are sole sourcing that technology to one manufacturer. So that is just something that needs to be carefully considered. It's not unheard of in the industry where a treatment process or a technology or a specific piece of equipment is sole sourced. It's actually fairly common, but it is something that you need to be aware of and be eyes wide open with. That's who you're going to be dealing with in 10 years when you decide to expand the plant. And then we talked about this before. If you were to substantially invest into the existing site and then decide to move in 10 years, 15 years, that would be extremely costly because you would have already put all this money into the existing facilities. And then drawbacks of the new plant, obviously the high immediate sewer rate impact. You'd have to find the right piece of land with the right setbacks, and obviously that could be challenging, given that it's likely some folks that would live next to it might not find that favorable, and then you would need a pump station to get to that existing site. So our next steps here is really to decide in this facility planning process if the city wants to proceed down the route of phasing at the existing site or further investigation regarding a new site. And in reviewing the sewer rate impacts, I think that's a significant portion of that decision. And once that decision's made, we need to proceed with development of that facility plan, which finalizes the details of what would be designed and constructed. And then once that facility plan is completed, proceeding into design of either phase one at the existing site or design for the new facilities. So I can back up and go over any of these other items in more detail depending on the interest.
Does anybody have any questions for Travis? Yeah, Mary?
I have a question about AGS due diligence. I think I asked a similar question about the risks at our last meeting. Given that they would be the sole supplier, the risk on acquisition of parts if something goes wrong, expertise, the financial strength and viability of the company. And I don't know how far of due diligence has been completed on this particular firm. I think they're international. They have a small number of customers here in the US. So I think I'm still looking at the risk of that particular option just from a single source perspective. And I guess another way of thinking of it is if we were to choose to go to a new location, would it be our method of choice? And that maybe kind of would give me some indication whether the risk is smaller than what I think it would be as a single source provider.
Sure. So the technology was developed about 20 years ago over in Europe, and it's been brought over to the US and it is licensed through Aqua Aerobics out of Rockford, Illinois, and they are definitely a long-standing wastewater company themselves. Aqua Aerobics, we work with them on a routine basis. They make all kinds of wastewater equipment, and I would say they're definitely a big player in the wastewater world. There are several plants that have installed this that are up and running, and there are several more that are under construction. I think I don't know the exact year that it was installed, maybe 5 or 6 years ago. The first one went in the United States, and there's been several installed since then. And certainly by the time this would get constructed, there'll probably be at least a dozen plants operating. We did go with Bill Kiesling out to a facility by Kansas City to review a full-scale municipal installation that was about the size of the Lake Mills plant, and we got feedback from the operator there, and they had very positive things to say about it. So we have certainly been doing due diligence. It's by no means a decades-old technology. It certainly is a newer technology, but I guess by no means would it be considered untested. There are many plants in Europe that have been operating for many years, and they're now getting a decent track record in the U.S. Regarding the new site, I do see some benefits of installing this technology at the new site because it's more modular in nature. If you recall, the other technologies would be more traditional activated sludge with clarifiers, and that's certainly a great option. We design those systems all the time. But the AGS system is a bit more modular because if you need more capacity, you construct another reactor, and that doesn't necessarily mean you add more, another clarifier or add on to your, pump station or anything like that. You're kind of just adding capacity in blocks. So certainly you wouldn't be tied into that technology, but that's one of the big advantages of it, especially for a growing community like Lake Mills or where you might be adding industrial capacity kind of stepwise over the course of years. I see that as an advantage. So hopefully that answered some of your question at least.
Yeah, that was helpful. Thank you.
Greg?
Travis, I'm sorry, I got my mic on now. Hey, Travis, could you address the byproducts with AGS? Is it a cleaner byproduct than the traditional means?
No, it's very similar to conventional activated sludge. You're going to produce biosolids that are very similar. At its heart, it's an activated sludge process. It's just designed to promote solids that settle much more quickly than a traditional activated sludge system, and that provides some efficiencies both from a footprint and an energy standpoint. So, and it is providing biological phosphorus removal as well, which is important for meeting permit limits. So from that standpoint, it's very similar to the traditional activated sludge technologies.
But you are getting cleaner water in a quicker fashion? Is that what I understood there?
Yeah, so in a conventional activated sludge, you'd have your oxidation ditches or your aeration tanks, and then that goes into a clarifier, and you have to have enough time, probably 30 minutes to an hour for those solids to settle out. Whereas it might only take 5 minutes for the solids to settle out with the AGS system. That's really the advantage. That's how they have a smaller footprint than the conventional system, because it's much more, it's faster settling. So the end product is not necessarily cleaner. It's the same level of quality. It's just done in a smaller footprint.
Okay, thank you.
Anybody else have any questions for Travis? No. I have a question. So going back to the biosolids drying, I know last month you had the footprints of the plant at the existing site, and you stayed within the existing footprint. Now, we do have city-owned land right just to the right of the existing site, which is the deactivated substation, almost deactivated. And so if that land is there an advantage in using that deactivated substation land for biosolids storage rather than going with the costs of drying to 90%? Now, and I don't know what the costs of drying to 90% are, because it's in phase 2, AGS and drying, so the drying isn't broken out separately. So I don't know if it's 1 million out of the 27 million or 26 million out of the 27 million. So if you could explain some of those things, please.
Yeah, so that is something that we could definitely look at, is going to biosolids dewatering and using the area of the substation for dewatered sludge storage, and that would likely give you enough space, at least in this planning period. And then if you wanted to at a later date, you could always add drying onto that process, because regardless, you have to dewater before you go into the sludge dryer. So you could set it up to do it in a phased process where, as a first step, you could just go to dewatering and biosolid storage. And then as time progressed, and if, space became an issue, or if regulations became an issue, then you could decide to add on the sludge dryer, and then you'd certainly have enough space, because it's very, very easy generally to dispose of the dried solids, much less volume, and it's easier to get rid of. So that's definitely an option that we could look at in the facility planning process, is at what point would the timing be appropriate to add drying, or would we just make sure that the design accommodated adding a dryer at some point in the future?
And do you have any, off the top of your head, cost estimate of what the cost of the drying was in the current site cost versus,
Yeah, the dewatering and drying was probably in the magnitude of like $6 million.
okay.
Mark,
That was phase two.
if I may point out, the last treatment plant I managed, we did there also produce Class A biosolids. It is a much more eco-friendly end product, and we had many more options for managing it at the end, so.
Yeah.
Just like to.
It's all a matter of trade-offs, cost versus,
And I don't think, it doesn't seem to have been a problem in Lake Mills since I haven't heard it, but in my previous community, we were having a greater and greater difficulty finding farmers that would take the sludge. We had to keep going further and further out and increasing our hauling costs more and more and more because for whatever reason, farmers were no longer interested in taking the biosolids that we were generating. So that's something to consider as well, is they're getting more difficult to get rid of.
we have solids, 90% solids in the existing plant in the costs, and we have 20% solids, which is more, it's not really solids at that point, is my understanding, still requires injection at the new site. So I'm just trying to understand and make a more of an apples to apples comparison here. I'm not saying we should go one way or the other. I'm just, you know, we have the choice of doing that at some point in the future, near term, far term.
Yeah, the drying does not have to be decided.
No.
In the short term at all.
Right. But adding drying to a new plant, a new site, increases the costs at the new site because it's not currently included.
That's correct. It would add a few million more.
Yep. Any other questions for Travis?
I'll go ahead and make a statement that just looking at the numbers and what we're looking at as far as the existing site or a new site, the one thing that's really attractive about using the existing site is but spreading those costs out over a lot larger time period, where if we go with a new wastewater treatment plant, we're looking at $55 million to be paid for through rate increases over the next 5 years, which would have a huge impact. So looking at these scenarios, by going with the existing site, we're probably going to save each household about $5,000 over a 15-year time period. So that seems significant, especially when you extrapolate that over the whole city. So so I see some advantages with using our existing site with the new technology.
Yeah, following that, I looked at that too, and it's basically within 4 years it doubles. I mean, so kind of looking at it from that standpoint, I mean, aside from all the other logistical things we talked about, just looking at that alone, it's kind of jumps out.
Where you don't double for 12 years, given everything we know today on using the existing site, so it does make a big difference for people.
So where do we go from here?
My suggestion would be if the board or anyone on the board knows which direction they would like to go, that you make a motion to recommend that the city council proceed with the completion of a facility plan to submit to the DNR for whatever your chosen option is.
Okay.
Anybody want to do that? I'll just add that the existing site has the advantage of moving decisions into the future, which the future is not, we don't know what's going to be available for technology We don't know, we'll know more in the future than we do right now, so we can make those decisions better in the future than we can right now.
I guess I can
The only,
try to put a recommendation together here.
yeah,
Go
the only
ahead.
statement I'll make, and I'm not advocating for it, just to play devil's advocate for the Public Works Board, is the strongest argument against the current site is simply if you were going to build, if we didn't have a wastewater treatment plant and we were gonna build one today, you would never build it where we have it right now.
Correct.
That's the greatest argument against it. There's a lot of reasons to stay at the existing site, so I'm just playing devil's advocate there that would be the main argument. If you were doing it from scratch, you wouldn't put it in the middle of your city.
When it was put there, it wasn't in the middle of the city either.
Correct.
Well, if all costs were equal,
Right,
we wouldn't be keeping it in the middle of the city.
yes.
But the way that the numbers are falling out, I think the impact on the citizens is too extensive with a new location. I put a few spreadsheets together just trying to like toss the numbers around and make it feel good, and it doesn't feel good.
Yeah,
The increase is just quick and it sticks.
yeah, the
Stays
numbers
high.
have probably changed a little since we last looked at it, but it would certainly place us in the highest of percentiles for wastewater rates in the state of Wisconsin, which is a very difficult position to be in.
Well, I think the thought about future technology and some of the drying things that we talked about, that's added cost that's not even reflected right now, so that limits your ability to add anything to it anyway. So you're basically spending more money to get to where you are, is what it kind of feels a little bit like.
I can take a stab at it. Mr. Daly or Mr. Dressler, if you guys can help me as I go through this, if you have a suggestion, but let me throw something out here real quick. So I move to recommend to City Council that we review the existing wastewater treatment plant for phased development to meet the DNR requirements. Moving forward. Is that okay? Thoughts there?
I think it would work.
You know,
I would I think I would add and begin development and initiate development of a facility plan for submittal to the DNR. So that's the next step we
Okay,
have to do.
that makes sense.
So we can tack that onto the end, Dan.
I'm gonna reread what I have.
Dan's gonna reread what he has.
All right, I did take one liberty with your statement, so this is what I wrote. A motion to recommend to the city council to proceed with the phased development on the existing site and to initiate development of facility plan for submittal to the DNR.
Sounds great. So we need a second.
I'll second that.
Second.
I think, Tom, was that you?
Tom, did you second?
I seconded.
All right, we have a motion and a second. Would anybody like to hear the motion reread?
Or debate? If there's any.
Or, yeah, thank you. Any discussion on the motion? And everybody, and the motion is for the existing site. I'll just put it very shortly like that. All right? Then we'll vote. All those in favor of the motion, roll call, please. Yes, I'm sorry. I was kidding.
Madison, can you call a roll call vote, please?
Mr. White?
Aye.
Mr. Waters?
Aye.
Mr. Polachek?
Aye.
Mr. Beagle?
Aye.
Ms. Schmager?
Aye.
Mr. Picard?
Aye.
Motion passes 6-0.
All right.
Okay, thank you, everyone.
Thank you,
Thank
Tom.
you.
Thanks, Travis.
Thanks, bye.
All right. Next, item 8, presentation on downtown bicycle route option.
Dwayne?
Would you like me to start, or did you
Yes.
want to open up?
Nope, you can go right ahead.
All right, I'm going to go right to sharing my screen as well. Can everyone see the presentation?
No, we see
Not
you.
yet.
Trying
Not that
again.
we mind, but
Yep.
I have mine on.
Of course, it worked before the meeting. My apologies, everyone. Think I found it. How does that work?
Not yet. There we go.
Yay.
My apologies. Sorry about that. Thank you for your time. As requested in previous meetings, we reviewed a portion of the bicycle plan as it relates to the existing infrastructure. And in particular, this board requested looking at one of the first options, looking at a direct bike path marked route with bike lanes from the east side to downtown and around Commons Park. So this options analysis kind of shows a couple ways it could be done, but I want to note that the analysis and most of the presentation is based on low capital investment costs, meaning we're not replacing curb to much extent. We're not widening the roadway. We're looking at markings only to keep the capital costs down. For example, just to give you an idea why that would be a concern, not only would it be an infrastructure issue to widen, but curb and gutter is running about $50 a linear foot right now. So any kind of change in width of these streets quickly adds up. I'll also add, typically don't start a presentation with the summary, but as we move through this presentation, you're going to see that without a significant capital investment, the decision of marked bike lanes on East Lake Street and downtown is ultimately a question for this board and for the council to choose between bike lanes and parking sites.
Spots.
So I will try to go through this quickly. Hopefully you've had a chance to look at the packet that was included. In general, the next couple slides are right directly from the 2005 bicycle plan. On this slide, the yellow area is showing the area that we're going to talk about tonight. It is actually on the plan. It's called through route number 2, or a portion of through route number 2. And route number 2 extends from the east side of the city through downtown and then north to northwest on Madison Street. The next slide is again from that bicycle plan. Just the highlighted areas talks about the through route number 2 and the area that we're talking about from Madison Street to Enterprise. I'll note this slide, while maybe this isn't the best picture for it, the yellow highlighted does show what we're going to talk about tonight, and it extends from the Enterprise Drive area to downtown and around Commons Park. I'll note that all of the aerials that you're going to see tonight are
actually aerials that were taken in April of '23. They are currently being processed by the county, and hopefully the county website will be up and running soon with the new aerials, but you'll be interested to see the clarity that the new photos do bring. Maybe not in this example, but later in some of the pictures, you're going to see much closer pictures and very good clarity. Moving on, through routes number 2, as we talked about, this is really a connection and what we're looking at is a connection at Enterprise Drive. The reason we're not going further to the east is that that's the location where the jurisdiction of Jefferson County East Lake Street changes. It also is a direct access to a shared use path that goes north and south, which is also route number 9. So leading into the area of Lake Street, Enterprise Drive to Main Street, we're looking at 2 bicycle lanes, 1 in each direction, and we're evaluating the impacts of low capital investment costs, as I mentioned before, no major street infrastructure changes, or very little, and then basically street markings required. The next slide talks about some of the parameters that are used. This is from the Wisconsin Department of Transportation's Facility Development Manual, what's also called the FDM. This is a portion of that document that talks about bike lanes on a curb street without parking. So in those areas, typically you're looking at 11 to 12 foot traffic lanes, and then 4 to 5 foot bike lanes. But note that you're not including the pan of the roadway in the case where you're talking about asphalt and concrete transition. So maybe downtown Main Street, that's all integral concrete curb. That would be the left side. But the areas we're talking about today are going to be all on the right side, which is an 11 to 12 foot lane and a 4 to 5 foot wide bike lane, not including any part of the concrete curb. The next slide is also from the FDM. This shows bike lanes on a curb street with parking, and you can see how that changes a little bit slightly. The traffic lanes are still 11 to 12, but the bike lanes are increased to provide more safety from the combination of the traffic lane and the parking lane. I'll note that the parking lane is typically 8 to 10 feet wide, but in this case, now we can count the pan in that calculation. Moving on, I've provided a couple of cross sections from Main Street. In particular, the one on the bottom shows what happens between Lake and Madison on Main Street, and there is actually two bike lanes and parking on both sides, and that requires, I believe that requires 51 feet of concrete from back of curb to back of curb. As we extend into our further slides, all of the streets that we're going to talk about tonight are not this wide. So we also looked at a typical cross section down South Main Street, and if you recall, that's one parking lane. One parking lane on one side, and bike lanes on both sides requires 44 feet of back-to-back, or 42 if you're using an 11-foot lane. So I'm using this as we head into this further evaluation. What is the width of Lake Street? Lake Street has a width of 34.5 to 36 feet from Enterprise Drive to Madison Street. The existing width just does not support even one side parking with two bicycle lanes. You need at least 37 feet. So that option is not available. What could be proposed is eliminating the parking on this stretch of Lake Street, providing two 12-foot traffic lanes with 5-foot bicycle lanes on each side that will fit in this corridor. As we move further to the east,
You'll have to say something because he won't.
Dwayne?
Is there any questions?
Yeah, Dwayne, I have a question.
Sure.
Because you're talking about the, is there a scenario that because I've seen these in some cities, and actually I printed a picture out, where you could do a dual bike lane on one side and then have one side, so you have, it's not, for a bicyclist, is not the ideal scenario, because you're going cross, one lane is going with traffic and one's going against traffic. It's on one side of the road, and then you still maintain one side for parking. Would that fit with the width of the street that we're talking about this evening? I'm not saying I'm describing it correctly, but you have your both lanes, your bike lane is on one side, and then you park on the other side, and then your cars are in the center.
So the bike lane supports bicycle traffic going both ways.
Both ways. And I don't know if I can pass this down, but I mean, I should have made copies or photocopied it and uploaded it, but I didn't
Yeah.
print it out fast enough.
The photo has barriers between the bi-directional bike lane and the traffic lane in the
Yeah,
photo
like
there.
a small,
Both-
and I think it'd be
both-
tight. I was just curious. It means you use the pan. Is that what you call it, the pan? You'd have to use the full, like the curb.
Mary, I do think I know what you're talking about. Again, it goes back to, in order to provide that barrier, you're introducing a capital cost that we didn't look at.
Okay.
With this project. We're trying to keep it low capital costs. I also would be concerned, I can't say that I calculated that, but just based on, and I'm sure you saw me flipping back and forth.
Yeah.
I think it falls, even if you did do that, and I can look into it further after the meeting, I think you still fall in this 44-foot minimum because you're still trying to incorporate a parking lane. That doesn't change. You're just sliding the bike lanes together onto the left side, and then you're also introducing this median capital cost that would run. And I don't know if you can see my cursor, but say this bike lane came to this side, then there would still be that barrier that would have to be inserted in between.
Or paint.
We could look into that further.
I've seen it with color. I've seen it with colored paint and not with all of these posts as it shows in this picture. It was just a question. I mean, another option that I hadn't seen in the exhibit that you had been sharing.
I would caution, and I'm not sure, I think I heard somebody mention it. I would caution, having those competing directions. I think in some of I'd have to pull it up, but I believe there's some information in the manuals that talks about separating those in the same direction with traffic. If there isn't some type of barrier.
Okay.
But I can look into that further if that's something we want to explore.
Yeah, that was my question. Yes, I had the same question, but I saw a presentation of the city of Madison, their planning department. They call them two-way lanes, and they make sure that they're wider than the 3 to 4. They go with the 5 or wider if they can get it. But then that allows them to do parking on the other side. So the city of Madison does it on a number of different roads there.
And I would say, I'll go back to the first statement, is our analysis tonight was not to increase the capital costs significantly. And so all of those types of options are still out there. And probably, my gut feeling is that it probably means we need to push one of the two curbs further to get a little bit more width in order to do some of those options. I have not found an option yet that allows parking on one side and two directionals bike path on this street. Does that help answer the question?
Yes, thank you.
But I'm sure staff and I would look at other options if this board is requesting that as we finish the presentation tonight.
Yeah.
Any other questions while I'm where I was at?
Well, I was thinking maybe we should just finish the presentation and maybe go after those questions after the fact, because you might address some of this.
Maybe.
All right.
Why don't I proceed? So,
Yep.
in general, and we've been talking about it, is it's one or the other in this area from Lake Street to Madison Street. I will talk a little bit about one option that Mark and I, when we were measuring it, we were concerned about, and that was Rock Creek. It does allow for basically two options here. There's a narrowing at Rock Creek for the box culvert. But it does allow two options, either two 11-foot traffic lanes and 5-foot bicycle lanes, or, and that one's preferred because you have a wider bicycle lane as it comes up to this bridge. The other option is a and the concern with the first option is if we're at 12-foot wide on the remaining portion of this street, you're going to see aesthetically the lanes narrowing at the bridge. And lanes, I mean the traffic lanes. So the other option is to keep the 12-foot traffic lanes, but then you narrow down to the minimum 4-foot bike lanes at the bridge. Visually, the second option is probably better, but safety-wise, I think I would prefer to see option one implemented. Yeah. But both are possible as far as the width. So the concern we initially had, we did find that there was an option. Extending east, continuing all the way to Madison Street, same analysis that occurred west or east of the bridge. Then we get into two different topics of how to get around Commons Park. We looked at two different alternatives. The first alternative is a single one-way bicycle lane along westbound on Madison, and then coming back eastbound on Lake Street. And so in a sense, you're taking a counterclockwise travel around Commons Park. Of course, you're using the Main Street piece between Lake and Madison as well. Second alternative we'll talk about a little later is, and that we'll find, is that we can't really do two lanes or the bike lanes extended on Lake Street all the way to Main because of Ford Court, or we would have to change Ford Court. This alternative number two, takes both lanes from both sides of the roads and turns at Madison Street and connects to Main Street at that location. So now I'll head into alternate one and try to speed through some of the analysis. My next concern, or Mark and I, our next concern was this rumble strip that you see here. It does fit with an 11-foot bicycle lane and a 5-foot, a 5-foot bicycle lane and an 11-foot traffic lane. There's 16.7 feet between that rumble strip and the curb. In this area, it's already no parking. So at the rumble strip, we're not changing the bike or the parking at this point. And then on the opposite side of the road, there's a narrowing that's occurring. And again, that's fine. The two 11-foot traffic lanes, the 5-foot bicycle lane, and in this location, a parallel parking is 33 feet. There is 34 and a half feet there. So this would work in those two narrowed areas. I provide a couple documents here. I don't know if we need to go into too much detail. It's from, again, that was not standard detail drawings. It shows parking layouts in the areas of downtown. They're at 45-degree stalls, so you can see some of the dimensions that I used or that we used to do some of the calculations. Moving forward, how does that then affect Madison Street? Adding a 5-foot bicycle lane, even in one direction, on the north side, existing requires 80 feet of asphalt, and that's too narrow. So we will have to lose some type of parking in this block. There's two options that we've looked at. One option takes away option one takes away the parking on the north side of the road. We would lose potentially 13 to 15 stalls. It would keep the parking on the common side the same, and actually would provide a little even provide a little bit of a buffer between the traffic lane and the bicycle lane. Unfortunately, all of those things can't occur in that area. Option 2 on this next slide talks about the exact same thing, except in this option, rather than losing the north side parking, we're adjusting the south side parking, changing that from angled parking to parallel. This does fit. Unfortunately, changing the angled parking to parallel does cause a loss of 16 to 19 stalls. As you head even further, you have the right turn lane area that becomes a concern. The good news is it actually works for all scenarios. Adding the 1 5-foot bicycle lane requires 27 feet. We have about 32 feet between the median and there at Main Street. One caution is if we do lay this out in whatever way we do on Madison Street, we probably need to look westward on Madison Street, because the alignment of the center lines would change, and we may have to change some of the markings to the west. Continuing that counterclockwise route around the Commons leads us to another issue, and that is when you get to Lake Street, you're back to angled parking. In this case, the bike lane would be right behind the angled parking. I took this slide from a Federal Highway Administration AASHTO presentation, and I think if you were on a bike where this picture is being taken, you would understand why bike lanes should normally not be placed adjacent to a conventional front-end diagonal parking area. So I give you that slide so that we talk about this next portion. In order to make this recommended, we would potentially have to change the angled parking on the south side of the road from Main Street to Ford Court. The width is there, it would work, but it would create a reduction of 6 to 8 stalls. One additional factor in this area is there is one handicap parking stall that is in this area. There's a number of different options. We can move that handicap stall to the maybe not direct, but it's on the north side of the road near Ford Court. It could be marked in one of the angled stalls existing, or we could look at some minor capital investment costs. And here's one option. This is an example where the curb was replaced. It was lowered so that the parallel parking handicap stall can access the sidewalk on the right side of the vehicle. The next issue that we were very, very concerned about, which is Ford Court. It's probably the narrowest portion along this route, but it does allow for 2 11-foot lanes and a 5-foot bicycle lane in the eastbound direction. It's 27.4 feet of asphalt, and we need 27 feet. Very close, but it is acceptable. Then heading east of Ford Court, that parking would stay the same. The width is appropriate, and that eastbound lane for parking can exist. We've already kind of talked about this piece earlier. As that eastbound lane continues, the width is there for maintaining the parking. So let me summarize a little bit on alternate one. Alternate one, option one, which is going around the Commons Park one unidirectionally counterclockwise. We would lose somewhere between 19 and 23 stalls, which is option one, which is losing the north side parking on Madison Street and changing a portion of the south side parking on Lake Street to parallel downtown. Again, it removes, and in that number is all of the parking on Lake Street east of Madison Street is gone. Option number 2 in alternate one, which is changing the parallel parking on Madison Street, and also the parallel parking on Lake Street, accounts for 22 to 27 stalls lost. That was alternative one. Let's talk a little bit about alternative two, and then I'll open it up to questions. So alternative number two now says, let's get off of Lake Street downtown. Let's stay on Madison Street. Let's do two bike paths both directions. Can we do it? At the rumble strip, good news, both sides have 16 feet, so we can do exactly the same thing we did before. As we extend into the downtown area, unfortunately, too narrow again, but we can change the park side or the south side parking to parallel, and it would fit. This would, again, account for 16 to 19 stalls lost, and these would be in that transition from angled parking to parallel parking. There's one other concern with this option, alternative number two, and that is at the right turn lane. While it fits the two 11-foot traffic lanes and two 5-foot bicycle lanes, unfortunately, there potentially could be a loss of a stall or two as you approach the intersection because the traffic lanes and the bike lanes would interfere with those last couple of stalls. So I'm predicting that we would lose 1 to 2 more stalls. So this alternative number two then provides a loss of 17 to 21 stalls down. Are there any questions? And I hope I explained the numerous different calculations that were done for at least these couple of options.
I have a question, and I waited till the end, Greg. So I was curious if you have studied or looked at the possibility of back-end diagonal downtown as an alternative to, for safety. For it's the common, like in Austin, Texas, San Antonio. I mean, a lot of, and that might be in the. I don't know if that's in capital investment because I'm thinking it's paint, but that's still an investment as an option.
I did come across that. I didn't add a third alternative. I was looking for a little bit of feedback on whether how we should proceed.
Okay.
Again, as you've noted tonight, we could have probably done 10 different alternatives. So I did notice back in, so I'm glad you brought it up, but I didn't, I'm sorry I didn't take the time to add that alternative to this presentation tonight.
I have a question. I know you were trying to keep the capital investment down, but have you thought about two-way at the sidewalk level? That's another option that Madison seems to be doing. That might be an option around the Commons Park, so you can save some of the parking.
It did cross my mind. I know Drake and I have talked about that briefly for other portions of Lake Street several months ago. And while in the area east of Madison Street, that would affect street trees and a number of other things. But I agree that there is the potential, it would require park space to widen the sidewalk downtown, create a shared use path of 10 foot wide as you enter the park. And that, yes, that would be a capital cost, but it would solve some of the parking issues that are being presented here tonight.
Thank you.
So,
Something that I haven't completely thought through is how we would connect the bike trails as they come down Lake Street and then connect to the Madison Street or the Main Street bike lanes at the intersections, but I'm sure we could come up with some options.
so Dwayne, when I'm looking at the option 1 and option 2, option 1 being the counterclockwise, that looks like that's taking about 19 to 23 parking spots in the downtown area.
It is.
And then option 2, which is putting the bike lanes on Madison, that looks like that would take about 29 to 34 spots if I did that right. Are you coming with the same number?
No, I am not.
Okay,
So-
great. That's why I asked the question.
All right, so, I'll go through my numbers. I've got a total of alternative run, option 1. I've got 19 to 23 total.
Okay.
Alternative 1, option 2, I've got 22 to 27. And then alternative number 2, which puts both on Madison Street, 17 to 21.
Well, all those options take up a lot of parking spots, but
I don't like any of them.
That is a big concern.
Yeah.
my next question is on East Lake Street. Is there a street redevelopment coming up on that street, and how far out is that?
Glad you brought it up, Mark. Mark gave me much of the ratings this week. We just finished entering our rating system this morning, actually. And we'll start doing analysis for next year's maintenance plan. And we talked exactly about that. Lake Street is coming up on a chip seal decision, probably in the next year or two. I believe we're at the 7-year mark. Again, if you recall, we will have a very large list this year because we're getting into that backlog. And so really the decision on what is to be done with bike lanes here may affect when or how we do that maintenance. That street will definitely, when it does come up, Greg, Mark and I even had the discussion this morning, is at what point are we looking at mill and overlay once again? And I think I'd like to try and get one more chip seal if we can, one more cycle of chip seal. But those are coming in the next 2 years. So I think I and staff would like to incorporate both of those things at the same time. If we know we're going to do some type of restriping, then let's do the maintenance first, or vice versa. Do we do the striping, see how the striping's working, delay the maintenance for a number of years so that we can then head into, maybe we find out that one plan is working or it's not working. And then as part of a maintenance plan, maybe we can incorporate a second option. Does that help answer your question, Greg?
Yeah, part of the reason I asked the question was if you're gonna do work on the street, would that give us an opportunity to widen it a little bit so that we could get parking on one side?
Oh, as far as a total reconstruct,
Right.
the reconstruct on the street was done in 2000. Don't hold me to this, but I'm going to say 2002 or 4, when the sewer main was reconstructed down Lake Street.
So it's pretty recent then. Okay.
Yes, so we're
Why weren't we looking at this
still
then?
in. I'm sorry.
The bicycle plan came out in 2005,
It was a
remember?
few years before.
All right. The suggestion that Greg's threw out there as far as incorporating the sidewalk in the downtown area, I guess that's combining pedestrian and bicycles at the same time. It's an interesting concept. I don't know if I've ever seen that. I mean, I guess you see it in some tourist areas where they combine that, but
It's common, but I think what's interesting is the way that we utilize the park. I think the volume of pedestrians in certain circumstances is so heavy that I'm not sure how sharing, and even with a 10-foot, would work.
Right.
Honestly,
When
I think it would be very challenging to have the bikes, like when we have the
farmer's market.
farmer's market, or we have the festivals, the pedestrian traffic is really heavy, so that shared, because I'm an advocate for shared. I think you get you get both walking and biking, and you do it on the bike path today. You have walkers and bikers, and, but you can manage it.
Wallace Park has the multi-use path
Yeah.
that shares pedestrian and bicycle traffic. So it certainly does happen. It's for, the bike paths are more casual bikers typically, versus commuters who are on street, but you can share with pedestrians. But again, in downtown, you have, the more pedestrian traffic you're having is gonna make it more frustrating for a bicyclist that may be wanting to use it, so you'd have to consider that.
So one of the reasons, did somebody have something there?
Go ahead, Greg.
I was going to say, one of the reasons we're looking at this, of course, was when we did the strategic planning, there was a huge amount of feedback that bicycle lane or bicycle traffic or bicycle linking inside Lake Mills is highly desirable. The survey came back that was a positive thing. One of the things that was reviewed at that time was discussions about sharrows, is that how you say it? Of where traffic and bicycles kind of share the same area, but there's painting on the road that kind of designates that, hey, there could be bicycles here, be cautious. And maybe that's used more in secondary routes where this is more of a primary route, so maybe that's, I'm not sure if we could use that type of painting on maybe on this route, or what the thoughts are in that regard.
I don't know. I'd probably want to speak to a traffic engineer to figure out what that criteria is on when vehicular traffic becomes too busy of a street, I guess, that a sharrow isn't the recommended way to use it. So it's possible, I just don't know right now.
Drake, I believe you're correct. I think I came across some traffic volume considerations for sharrows. I can look into that further.
I think so.
And that was a comprehensive plan survey. I misstated that when I said strategic, it was comprehensive plan survey. So.
And we have used sharrows once before South Main Street was reconstructed in the mid-2000s. I believe, Mark, you may even still have the stencil there at the Public Works office, but I believe we had some sharrows marked on South Main Street prior to Main Street reconstruction.
There are some really, I think, more impressive sharrow markings in some of the newer communities that are adding more sharrows. I actually took a printout of another one I can share with whomever's interested. That is just, it just really catches your eye on bike sharing being prominent along the street lines. And so I think that's something worth considering or thinking about or learning more about, if it fits the traffic patterns fit the safety of the bicyclists. Because there are semi-tractor trailers that do come down through here, and I don't know I don't know to what volume or if that is a additional risk because of the large size of those vehicles, but so maybe a sharrow isn't the best option. I think I like that idea of looking into it.
Yeah, I guess, especially in the downtown area, I'm concerned about the parking. It's kind of strange because once they did they painted the bike lanes on South Main. Hardly anyone parks on South Main anymore. Maybe you see one every once in a while parked on the side, but the parking on the side of South Main is hardly ever used anymore. But the other day I was driving down East Lake Street. It was Saturday, about 1:30 in December, and I saw 2 cars were parked on the street. But I had 5 bicyclists that were using that road in December, so it was kind of strange that I wasn't expecting that, but people are using East Lake Street for bicycle routes even in December. So I guess I guess we should look at this a little bit more but I do have concerns about losing so much parking.
We'll take a look at, we'll discuss as staff options that may not result in the loss of parking, that the painting of the on-street bike lanes that we saw tonight. So we'll see if we can come up with anything else that, with sharrows and things of that nature, that may be available to us, and report back.
I would say the worst place in the city for bicycling is the block on Lake Street, just east of Main Street, where you've got all that parallel, or all that angled parking. Because the bicycle is supposed to ride on the right side, and a car starts coming out, they don't always walk out real slowly. It's just a congested area there.
Well, that's why I was asking about backing in
Right.
parking, which is how some cities are solving that, because then you can see, you're facing out, and it's not in your blind spot.
That would probably be just as hard as roundabouts for people to get used to.
Oh, it would. There's some, I saw some fun signs that helped you learn how to do that.
But yeah, I mean, change is not necessarily, change is constant, so. All right. Anything further on this topic?
A lot of good analysis done, though, so thank you.
Thank you, Dwayne. Thank you, Mark. A lot of work.
Thank you, everyone.
All right. Next, item 9, presentation on water conveyance system.
So the inspiration behind this is, over the course of my career to this point, I've managed a lot of different projects, some of the biggest infrastructure projects in the state. So I thought putting something together like this for a quick little informational program would be beneficial. Given the late hour, I'm more than willing to skip this for tonight, and we can do this next meeting perhaps, but I just thought for informational purposes, this was the motive behind it.
Any preferences for now or some other time?
Go ahead. I'm good.
I'm here.
Okay, well, over the last 15 years, I've taken a lot of pictures. I have about 10 or 20 thumb drives full of pictures from construction, so we'll quickly move on then. Last time we talked about where we get our water from, and then I thought maybe we could quickly go over municipal water and its conveyance system. Every community has pretty much a similar conveyance system. The only variances is where they draw their water from. To the east of us, most of those cities draw their water from surface, from Lake Michigan. Obviously, here in this area, we do a lot of well water production. And production is very simple. It consists of treatment, and then you have your distribution. And that consists primarily of storage, your pressure zones, and then your conveyance. And that's what we're going to talk about real quick tonight. I'm just going to draw on pictures from a construction perspective of different projects I've been on. And this will give you an idea when we're talking about water main breaks or valves failing. This will give you an idea of what we're looking at or what we're talking about. Next slide, please. And the next slide. Historically, civilizations have delivered water through an open air system. Next. And open air trenches. And this relies solely on gravity. And this is a marvel to me, but it is considered antiquated. Next. And then actually still to this day though, cities like Los Angeles, this is where this water is going, rely on open air trenches. That requires a lot of treatment. Next. Here though, we have a closed system. And our system relies on pumps, pressure zones, pipes, and with pipes, fittings, and valves. Next. We, like most communities, have basically a grid system. It's a quasi-grid system because these systems are never built all at once. They're added on to continually. But a grid system consists of your transmission lines, your heavier lines that are focused more on the volume of water, and then they sub off into the distribution pipes. So let me get my, whenever you have your distribution pipes going off laterally, you're always going to have your valves, like right here, right there, and the valves are then going to control the distribution. And the valves allow us to isolate certain lines if we need to, and regulate the water. Next, please. And then the next 3 slides are just showing you some transmission lines. These are often oversized, and again, they just focus on volume, not pressure so much. Next. And these are projects I've worked on with a 16-inch water main here. In this particular case, this is C900. I've done a lot of projects with poly pipe, either C900 or C905, and then with every system like this, you'll always have their cast iron fittings though. Next. And this is again the transmission system. On the next slides then we'll get into the distribution lines. So here you can recognize as a distribution because you're starting with a valve right off of a main. This is a very large valve, it's a gate valve, and then when you crank on this, it'll pull that gate up. And this is what you'll see out in the street once in a while. Someone from our water department will have a long key going down a little pipe, and they are setting the end of that key onto this nut right here. And then this will take about 50 cranks to get all the way open. And this particular system was cast as ductile iron. Next. And this is an example of a transmission going into the distribution here. This is a trans line. It's heavy, but then we have a T going right into a valve right off. And so from this point forward, this line system would become distribution. Next. This is another good example. This is all distribution now. We have what you prefer. If you have the finances, you're going to have 3 control points at every intersection. So this is my T, but we have valves at all 3 points here for this distribution. And this, with the more valves you have, the more options you have for shutting water off and isolating the problem and not affecting too many customers. Next. This is just a plan sheet to show you. I'm going to isolate some of these shots here just to give you an idea of why we build these the way we do. Next. So in this site, you'll see the water main here, and in this plan sheet, it's calling for a hydrant right there. This is the distribution line. It's going to be a little smaller now because the smaller you go, you're able to increase your pressure to your end product, to your client. Next. And this is your typical profile of a fire hydrant. It's going to have your water main right there, your distribution, then immediately a valve in order to shut off or open up that hydrant. And then you have your lead pipe, your shoe, and then your riser to the hydrant. Next. And these are just some simple diagrams you can recognize. This is what the hydrant looks like underground. We'll have our distribution line here with a T, which is always preferable. And then you're going to have your valve, your lead, and what's critical here is the break-off point right there. I know in Hollywood movies, you'll often see if someone hits a hydrant, there's going to be a big geyser. That's normally not going to happen. If the break happens right there, the water will still be trapped down here because the little valve up here that opens the hydrant is actually activating the gate down here. Next. And that's a similar picture. It shows you a better idea, though, where the shoe is and where the break-off point is. Next. And here are some hydrants being installed, just like the diagram you saw. Here's your water distribution main, but there's your valve right there. This is typically a 6-inch valve. Then you have your lead, and there's the shoe with the riser going up to the hydrant. Next. And next, these are just hydrants being installed. And now this plant, yes ma'am.
Can I ask a question?
Absolutely.
In front of our hydrant is a round, like plate looking thing, like a plate, and I don't know, what is that, and do I need to be shoveling that when I'm shoveling around my hydrant? It
No.
doesn't look like the thing, it doesn't look like that little.
We go back a slide, Dave, please. Oh, I might need to go back more than one. Another slide, please, back there. I'm guessing, Mary, that the plate has something to do with the valve.
Okay, a valve, I'll have to look and see if it says.
Now, it's possible,
How big is it? Is it like?
It's like, it's around like this big, maybe like a plate, like this big around, it's like right in front of the,
oh,
What is so what would a casting be, and should I be shoveling it? Yeah, it looks like a little baby manhole.
But too small for a man.
Oh, well, not necessarily, just curious. I'm learning about this, and so I'm like, hey, I'm not seeing that little round thing that's in front of the hydrant by my
Yeah,
house. And
I'd have to look
shovel
at it
every
before I can
winter
tell ya.
because I don't know what it's for, but.
I was thinking, we do in construction, we'll run a tracer wire here, and oftentimes we'll have a little pipe going up from that point with the tracer wire at the top of it, so we can connect to it, but,
Okay, we'll figure it out.
okay, send me a picture. Next, and next, there, okay. So in this line now, we're gonna focus on, at the end of this presentation, I've showed you where we go off with the fire hydrants, and then we have these services. This is the individual services per home. It's very similar for commercial businesses as well. But what we do is we connect a series, two valves, and then they go into the property. Next,
So those are also called laterals, correct?
services. Well, typically, some are different. You consider sewers laterals and water services.
Okay.
Do you agree with that, or? Yes.
It depends,
In my world, it was always sewer, lateral, water services.
tomato.
Yes, sir. So this is a profile view of a water service. You have your water main there. This is your corp stop. And then you have your lead to your valve box. This is what you'll see, a little round plate, normally in a terrace or in the road or in a sidewalk. And they put that long key down there and rest on this nut here. And this way they can shut off or open up the water going to a residence. And so this is typically the edge of an individual's property line, the right of way. This is the plan view of it. That's the corp, that's the top of the valve box, and then this would be where we would connect, or the customer would have connected to their water to their property. Next.
So for lead service, we're responsible up to the property line.
Absolutely. From that former picture, right, we call it the right of way, and from that point on, that's the homeowner's responsibility or the business owner's.
Right. So if that part is lead, that's their responsibility. We can't even do it for them.
Right. We don't want to. They probably wouldn't want us to. It's best for everybody. This is just another example that included the foundation of a home, though. That's why I threw it in there. You have your corp stop, and then your valve box, and then it just shows you how for most homes, it will go underneath the foundation. Nowadays, these meters are outside of the home now. But next. This is a corp. What I was just describing as a corp stop. This is something that we mount. This is a saddle that we mount onto the pipe. Next. This is the corp mounted. Once we mount the housing there, we then drill the hole through the housing into the pipe, and then we put the valve on it. Next. And there's a good example. This is water service going into a residence. This is a poly pipe, typically 3/4 inch, 1 inch. And this, if the picture continued, you would see your valve box up there. Next. And here's just a field example. This is the valve box right here. That gentleman is standing on the water main. Don't be fooled. This is a gas main valve right there. That has nothing to do with the water system. But I threw this one in the next slide in there just to give you an idea of what it looks like in the field. Next. And there is the valve box. There is your water distribution main, and so it goes from there. There's going to be a corp right there, and then it goes up to the valve, and then we stop right there at the property right away. And that concludes this little session of water conveyance. So
The riser for the hydrant,
yes,
is that controlled at the valve or the shoe below so it doesn't freeze?
yes, yes. The actual valve is down in the shoe or the boot.
Okay.
So
And when the valve is closed, it actually drains into the ground, I believe,
yes,
so that it doesn't contain water after it's
yes.
turned
There
off.
are bleeder holes in that system. So, yep. Any other questions?
Very interesting, thank you. Next is item 10, recommendation for future agendas.
Well, I'll have more information then for the yard waste site.
Yeah.
That'll be on the next agenda.
Are we gonna have bicycle again in the near future?
We'll try.
All right.
Does the board enjoy the educational presentations Randy's been doing? If you'd like, we thought they might be helpful to kind of give an overview or a base knowledge for the, types of systems that the Public Works Board interacts with and oversees. But just want to make sure that everyone thinks they're beneficial.
We can always waive them if there's time constraints or what have you.
I think they're beneficial. I would like to learn also, I'm thinking from the Public Works Board perspective, like what your quality control is on certain things. Like, so how do you make sure that, you don't have imposters
Absolutely.
damaging something, or what you do for, like making sure that there aren't faults in those things. And so when you're, that would just be an angle of when you're presenting that I would think would be very interesting.
On this presentation here, Mary, I could bore you for the next 3 hours just on the slides I had here on quality control.
Yeah, I just as an angle, I think it'd be very interesting.
Yeah.
I think that kind of high-level view of the electrical after today's start off would be good, just with like how often the insulator caps just blow and cause problems like that. That's.
You want to come by Light and Water, I'll show you a bucket of blown insulator caps there.
Not often.
Right, but right now we have a bucket of them, so.
Oh.
Jeez.
All right, anything else for future agendas? All right, then I'll declare the meeting adjourned. Thanks, everybody.
Thank you.